Hi, everyone, and welcome to Insights in Caribbean Intellectual Property, the official podcast of the Caribbean and America's Intellectual Property Organization. I'm your host, Pete Manning, along with Kathy David. Today's topic is intellectual property an obstacle or catalyst for growth? Intellectual property rights. Most people think they protect innovation and creativity. But what if they're actually holding back development in ways that affect billions of people worldwide? Today, we're exploring how this complex system impacts everything from life-saving medicines to traditional cultural knowledge.
That's such an interesting perspective, especially when you look at what's happening in places like Haiti, where they've actually written IP protection into their constitution.
Well, here's what makes that so fascinating. They're the only country in CARICOM to take such a strong stance. But you know what's really interesting? While some countries are strengthening their IP laws, others are finding creative ways to, well, let's say work around them.
Hmm. You mean like how some developing nations are technically signing on to international agreements but not actually implementing them?
Exactly. It's like they're playing this sophisticated game of chess. They're members of the World Trade Organization and technically agree to TRIPS requirements. But then, nothing. No domestic law updates, no enforcement changes. And here's the kicker. Some of them are still managing to advance their development goals.
So, what's driving this resistance to stronger IP protection?
Well, it really comes down to three main concerns. First, there's the economic impact. Stronger IP protection often means higher prices for everything from software to machinery. Second, there's the whole issue of access to medicines, which became super clear during COVID-19. And third, there's this fear that foreign companies will profit from local traditional knowledge and resources.
That reminds me of something I read about how during the pandemic, several countries were pushing for patent waivers on COVID vaccines.
Right, and that debate perfectly illustrates the tension here. You've got pharmaceutical companies saying they need patent protection to fund research and development, while developing nations are basically saying, hey, this is a global emergency. We need access to these vaccines now.
You know what's fascinating about this whole situation? The way it affects such different areas, from traditional medicine to cutting edge technology.
Oh man, let me tell you about something really interesting happening in the Caribbean community. Their founding document actually calls for creating a regional IP rights administration, but get this, after all these years, it's never happened. The only real movement on IP in the region has come from outside organizations like the EU.
That must create some interesting dynamics.
Well, here's the thing. These international organizations often come in with this one-size-fits-all approach that just doesn't work. They're not considering local contexts, resources, or needs. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
That makes me wonder about how countries are protecting their traditional knowledge and cultural expressions.
So, this is where it gets really interesting. Some countries are developing completely new legal frameworks, what they call sui generis systems, specifically designed to protect traditional knowledge. But implementing these systems requires expertise and resources that many countries just don't have.
Well, that certainly puts things in perspective when we think about global innovation and development.
You know what's really mind blowing? Some studies suggest that stronger IP protection doesn't always lead to more innovation in developing countries. In fact, in some cases, it might actually slow down technological advancement because companies can't afford to license existing technologies.
That seems to go against everything we usually hear about IP rights.
Exactly. And here's another surprising fact. During the early stages of their development, many now developed countries actually had pretty weak IP protection. The United States itself was known for copying European inventions during its Industrial Revolution.
That's quite a revelation. So, where do you see this all heading?
Well, I think we're going to see a more nuanced approach emerging. Instead of this binary, strong IP protection versus weak IP protection debate, we'll likely see different systems for different contexts. Maybe stronger protection in some areas, more flexibility in others.
That sounds like it could be a more balanced approach.
Definitely. And you know what's really going to be interesting to watch? How countries handle new technologies like AI and genetic modifications. These are going to create whole new categories of IP challenges that our current systems aren't really equipped to handle.
That's such a good point about emerging technologies.
And here's what it all comes down to. We need to start thinking about IP rights, not just as legal or economic tools, but as instruments of development and social progress. The question isn't just how do we protect innovation, but how do we ensure that protection serves everyone's interests?
That really puts the whole debate in a different light.
You know what? Maybe the future of IP rights isn't about more protection or less protection. It's about smarter protection, protection that recognizes different needs, different contexts, and different paths to development. Because at the end of the day, isn't that what innovation is really about? Finding better ways to do things that work for everyone? Thanks for joining us on this episode of Insights in Caribbean Intellectual Property. Please follow us wherever you listen to this podcast so that we can let you know when there's a new episode. If you listen to us on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and share. See you next time.